I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
Kenobi!
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Lots of exciting Star Wars news out this week surrounding The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. We'll be bringing that to you later in the HoloNet news segment. I'm your host, Carter, of the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast. We are bringing you a really interesting study of a comic book that came out in 2014. It was a lost episode of the Clone Wars. When the Clone Wars was taken off air in Cartoon Network, they premiered a few projects in different ways. One became a novel, one became a comic book, some became just stills, and this one became a comic book. And until yesterday, until February 22nd, 2023, I had never, ever laid eyes on this comic before. I knew about it, I knew the plot, but I'd never actually read it. I read it for this episode, and let me tell you, this is one of the best pieces of Star Wars comics in general. We're really on a dark side kick today, Colin. We are really, or not just today, this week. We did Darth Vader 2015 last week. We're doing Darth Maul, son of Dathomir, today. So, without further ado, I'd like to hear your opinion on this. Darth Maul's dastardly doorman, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter, how are you today? I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to review this comic. You know, I just like you, I've heard about this thing. I haven't had a chance to read it. You know, of course, you can go to fabulous Wikipedia and read plot synopsis all you want, but it's not going to do the same thing as if you're reading in the comic book or the graphic novel in your hands, right? But this thing, dare I say, I'm going to get some hate for this, I'm sure. This is like an Avengers style comic book.
It is like that.
That's a lot of the big bad, you know, there's no redeeming character in this, none whatsoever.
Oh, this is a bad guy story through and through.
Yeah, and they all come together and do some really cool things, which you're fixing to hear about.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. We're going to take a dive into this book. We're just going to go through it the same way we do always. We're going to hit the high points, talk about the coolest aspects, and we're going to sell this book to you on why you should pick it up. I got the graphic novel on Amazon for, I think, $15, and it's absolutely worth every penny. It's a super interesting story. So for the setup, for those of you who have seen the Clone Wars arc that involves Eminence, it's when Darth Maul overtakes Mandalore, he forms the Shadow Collective, and he becomes the ruler of Mandalore, has the Darksaber, kills Pre Vizsla. This takes place immediately after the fight between Darth Maul and Palpatine, where Palpatine kills Darth Maul's brother, Savage Opress, if you remember those episodes from the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I watched them just to so I could get the whole story on this thing. Subscribe to Disney Plus and go check those out. The whole thing is amazing. I feel like they could do a movie on just this part.
Well, that's the thing. After reading this book, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same as reading Dark Disciple.
Right.
Yes, it's the same as reading Dark Disciple because you love it. The story is so good, but man, you wish you could have seen this in the Clone Wars. You want to see this on the screen.
I gotta tell you, this comic book, you can tell it has Clone Wars fingerprints all over it. It's just like you're watching an episode, except on print.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Episodes, this would be a 3.
It's one of the things, though, is not in the Clone Wars art style. That's the important and interesting part, is that it's actually in a hyper-realistic art style, which makes, I don't know about you, my dear listeners, but when you listen or read or look at any Star Wars media, I kind of flip back and forth between the voices from the Clone Wars and the voices from the prequel trilogy, and it really just varies by character. I hear everything in Ewan McGregor's voice when I'm reading Obi-Wan, no matter what. I hear everything in Darth Maul's voice from the Clone Wars.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing, Darth Maul had a handful of lines in The Phantom Menace, and so I hear Sam Witwer's voice every time I hear Darth Maul. But it's really interesting. The one that I always go back and forth on, and I can't ever tell who it actually is Count Dooku. Sometimes I'll hear Count Dooku from the Clone Wars, and sometimes I'll hear him straight out of the prequels, and it really just depends scene by scene how I hear it.
Yeah. No, that's really good points, and I think just the art of the comic books gives everything a lot more gravitas. You know, the you could do a lot more than with animation. Animation is expensive to do compared to print media. But like even the droids, they look scary in this.
Yes,
you can tell they're
they do.
just not common droids. They're General Grievous's droids.
Well, the interesting thing about the droids on Stygian Prime and the droids throughout the series is their paint job. I mean, they all look different. They've got this weird kind of cubish Tetris-looking design on them, and they're completely gray. It was an interesting choice, and you know, we don't have any information on these droids on like why do they look this way? Are they droids specific to a planet? Like, we have absolutely no information. This was one of the things that struck me about the comic book from the very first scenes, is seeing stuff like this.
Yeah. So, gosh, there's a lot to this book. There's not, you know, it's not a long book, but as with any comic book, they cram a lot in here.
Yeah. Well,
the first Star Wars anything too. Really.
The first pages are already evoking. The Palpatine writing in this is very good. The Darth Sidious writing in this is very, very good, because you have this hidden prison that few know about on Stygian Prime, and it's such a cool. It's so cool to think that Sidious has some hidden prison that nobody knows about, because he's got all of this awesome hidden stuff. I mean, it's always cool that Sidious has these machinations. He has Exegol. He's got his place in the Works District. He has the tower where Darth Vader was built. He has all these like real estate holdings, and you have no idea where he got them.
Yeah, and how do you keep track? I keep track of some of my stuff sometimes.
Right, exactly.
I've lost vehicles almost. Where'd this one go? But yeah, these first pages include a flashback. And it gives a hint, not the full story, of how Maul came to Sidious in the first place. And I never knew this. This is really cool, interesting parts, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And we learn a little bit more about that later on in the book. And we learn a lot about Maul's backstory, which, I mean, I think gives him a ton of dimension as a character. One of the things we also see in the very beginning of this book is Count Dooku and Darth Maul meeting for the first time. The two pawn apprentices crossing paths. And it's interesting how much of the Clone War people met at the end of it. Anakin and Grievous didn't meet until the final days of the Clone War.
Not even in this book. He's kind of missing.
Yeah, Anakin's not even in this book. I don't think he's in a single panel in the book, as far as I remember.
Mentioned, it might be. I don't remember.
Possibly. I don't even know if he is either. But well, he's mentioned indirectly when Maul is trying to tell Dooku he's lining up a successor already. But I think that's it. I think that's the only even indirect mention of Anakin in this book.
Yeah.
Is right there. And we know that Maul, at this point in his life, is just a truth teller. I mean, he is, forgive my colloquialism, he's just spitting facts.
Yeah, he is.
He's telling Dooku what's going to go on. He says, you're done for. Sidious is going to kill you unless you join me, and that's true. We also see at the end of the Siege of Mandalore when he's telling everyone in the Republic, you're all going to die, we're all going to burn, because he knows what's coming.
That was such a good performance. I watched that one too. Man.
Yes, it certainly was an amazing performance.
So what I really like this scene, and Maul is captured in this tower. What, Stygia Prime, you said?
Yeah, Stygian Prime.
I can't remember all these planet names. I apologize. But Maul's being held here, and Dooku's, getting the skinny on what's going on with everything here, and torturing and whatnot. And the Maul's Mandalorian super commandos are waiting in the wings to rescue him. It's really cool. But Dooku uses Force Lightning on Maul. We've never seen him do that. Ever. He's not.
Yes, we have. Attack of the Clones. He attacks Yoda with Force Lightning.
No, Dooku. I'm not. Maul never uses Force Lightning.
Oh, right. We've never seen Maul use Force Lightning. I don't think in any canon property.
He's probably not capable, I guess.
Right.
Right.
You know,
gray hair
in the old EU canon, Maul was really an underpowered Force user. And I think the excuse in the EU was that he wasn't. Yeah, exactly. But in the new Legend stuff, or in the new canon, Maul seems to be a more powerful Force user than he was, but he's still lower on the totem pole. I think Maul is a master duelist. I think he's a much better duelist than many of the Jedi. He's not a better duelist than Dooku. That's Dooku's thing, is how good he is at dueling. But I think Maul's aggressive, double-bladed style has led him to be a really good melee user. But I think his force adeptness isn't there in the same way that some other Jedi and Sith have it there.
Right. And surely it has to do something with dark side stuff. You're not able to have your full actualization stuff like Darth Vader won't mind trick somebody.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Well, we see in this book, a prison break. Maul is in prison. He's imprisoned after that Clone Wars arc by Sidious. He's being tortured by Dooku. And we just see panel after panel of Mandalorians clobbering droids and getting Maul to escape out of this Stygian prison. And it's something that seems like it's a prison break movie. Like it's everything. It's every beat for beat. They zip line through the cold mountains. I mean, it's everything you would expect. And there's even comedy from the droids. Like you said, they lifted this completely from the Clone Wars. I mean, the script is there. You can really, really tell that this was going to be a Clone Wars episode, and one that you wish you saw.
Maul and the Mandalorians get away, and the droids are standing there. Should we follow them? Negative. Definitely negative.
Right.
It's hilarious.
Right. It is. And it's, everybody knows how big and powerful Maul is. And so throughout the whole first issue, this is what we have is just daring escape by Maul, Dooku letting Maul go, and then we have the Separatist invasion of a Mandalorian outpost on Zanbar. And this is a super cool invasion because it's also, not only did Maul just meet Dooku for the first time, we just got to see Maul lock the Darksaber against General Grievous. And it's a whole super cool scene of just watching Mandalorians tear up some more droids again.
Right. Since you brought it up, since people including me, care so much about history and lore of the Darksaber, the Mandalorian Super Commandos recovered it from, what's the city on Mandalore?
From Sundari.
Sundari, yeah. So after the fight, I guess they rolled up and cleaned up Savage Press and did whatever with him, put him on the dung heap as they would.
Right,
and
right.
picked up the Darksaber and brought it to him here. There's a couple panels that mention it.
Yeah, and it's important, like you said, for us to remember. One of the things I put in my notes here is that the Darth Maul and Grievous dialogue in their first fight sounds like Dragon Ball Z. Like the things there, when you go and read this, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. They're like taunting each other, but in like really Dragon Ball Z ways. Like, I'm more powerful than you. It feels like an extended, it's only for a couple panels, but in the Clone Wars, it just would have totally felt like DBZ.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here we got two titans of bad guy.
Villains. Titanic villains.
Two Titanic villains. I want to say Force users, but, you get tricked into it. But Grievous just is using stolen lightsabers or conquested lightsabers. He's not a Force user.
Right. No, you're right. And we see...
But he's still very powerful. He can stand toe-to-toe with Maul.
In a later scene, we see how Grievous is so not a Force user. It's a really, really cool scene later at the very end of the book. But so that's... The whole first issue is just this setup for Maul escaping the prison and now why the Mandalorians and the Shadow Collective are fighting the Separatists. The opening of the second book is really, really interesting because we see Maul communing with Mother Talzin. We saw her die on Dathomir with Grievous, and this book tells us she's just supremely weakened. She's basically the Night Sister version of a Force ghost.
Right.
And Maul has to summon her. The Dark Sisters' whole thing is about this magic. They use the Force in such an interesting way. It's completely different than we understand the Force from the dark side and the light side perspective. It's wholly different. And so this scene right here of Maul communing with Mother Talzin shows us that Maul's been working for her this whole time. That a bunch of his plans were to support her and to help her with her machinations. And this book builds up Mother Talzin's power much more dramatically than we ever thought it was before.
Yeah, and it's all like a revenge plot against Darth Sidious.
Right. Because we learn about some backstory between the two of them from way before anything we've seen on screen, way before the Phantom Menace or anything like that. The backstory between Talzin and Sidious runs deep.
Yeah. These are really cool scenes with Mother Talzin here. The art's really cool. The green smoke that they usually do. I really like these scenes in the Clone Wars cartoons. I think she's an interesting character, like you said, with the magic. Man, yeah. So, and they're all headed to Ord Mantell.
Right.
This.
Which is where there's a Black Sun outpost. But as we know, the Black Sun are under Maul's control. And they're in it for profit right now, obviously. They're not wholly under Maul's beck and call. You see at the end of that Clone Wars episode, Maul executes all of the Black Sun leaders but one, so he has no choice but to join him. However, that is no longer the case as of this book, because they see Maul's power weakening. Right. But they bring in even a Night Brother clan. Mother Talzin brings in all of these melee weapon wielding Night Brothers.
Yeah, they're other Zabraks, and they have bow staffs kind of things. And their little fight scene coming up is really cool.
They are. And we can see in this book that the Mandalorians are deeply loyal to Maul. They are, as we know, very creedal. They will follow who holds the Darksaber. Only a handful of them won't, and those are the ones who think only a Mandalorian can wield the Darksaber. That's like Bo-Katan leaves when Maul acquires the Darksaber. But there's a giant contingent of Mandalorians willing to work for Maul.
Yeah, and they're all decked out in their red and black Mandalorian armor. I'm sure the armorer made all that stuff back on Mandalore.
Right. And so we see in the subsequent scenes that Dooku heads down to the planet to end this once and for all in confrontation with Maul, and it was all a trap. It's actually in complete reverse. Maul is in Mandalorian ships, boarding General Grievous's separatist warship, while Dooku is on the ground having to fight multiple Night Brothers at a time, which we see is absolutely no problem for him.
Yeah, it's really cool scenes.
He quickly dispatches them with that same Force lightning.
Yep. Very cool. And so, yeah, the ruse works. Grievous is captured by Maul, and so is Dooku. Man, seeing that Darksaber in action is something else. Yeah. Dooku's surrounded. All the droids are killed. And you can't, you can do something about some young Zabraks wilderness staff, but not against that many super commandos.
Right.
Yeah, and so once again, Maul communes with Mother Talzin, and it's like, you were right.
And it's the reason they're communing is because Maul was successful in capturing not just Dooku, but also General Grievous.
Yeah,
and
big deal.
It's pretty amazing that these Mandalorian super commandos plus Maul are able to lock away two of the most powerful and worst people in the galaxy in one fight. I mean, something the Jedi haven't been able to do for 3 years.
Yeah, very cool scenes. Very powerful, and you think Maul's just... I was watching even those Clone Wars episodes. You're like, Maul and Savage Opress, they're just two dudes. But they're so powerful. Their willpower is just... I'm surprised that yellow lantern ring isn't come chasing them around or something,
Right. The subsequent issue 3, is where we finally get the Jedi involved just a little bit. We got, of course, Obi-Wan. You can't have a Maul story without Obi-Wan. But we also have Mace Windu, Ayla Secura, and Master Tipley join the fight.
And her skin is red. Take note of that. It's an important plot point here.
Right.
She's an alien. She looks like
she's a Mickeyan.
Is that a Disney thing?
It was created for the Clone Wars, I believe.
For a specific purpose. It's really cool to see all of these Jedi come together. Like I said, this is an Avengers story, kinda. I mean, like all the big bads, these major characters. Ayla Secura, I really like her. I'm sorry the way she died. She just turned around and got smoked.
Right.
Mace Windu, we always need to see more of him, right? I like that old Clone Wars cartoon. There's one of him fighting a bunch of droids.
Yeah, and there's really good scenes in that Tartarovsky Clone Wars.
To see all this come together is like Geonosis almost again, right?
Well, really what the thing is this is a huge moment that the Republic misses out on, that if they could just understand to shoot a missile at these guys, then you wipe out the Separatists, you wipe out Maul, you get everyone but Darth Sidious in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
I mean, you end the Clone War and effectively end Sidious's plan. They're going to have to start from scratch again, so that'll buy you another 1,000 years. In the subsequent scene, it's really good because we have Maul with the upper hand over Sidious, or as it seems, and Maul is telling Sidious, what do you want me to do with these two? We're gonna trade on this. And Sidious asks him, what are your demands? And that's an amazing thing to hear from Sidious, because you would never expect him to even be in the position to say something like that. But then shortly after, he's totally willing to dispatch them because they're failures, which makes sense. I think in this moment, Sidious really was willing for Maul to kill them. He would have been okay with it, but I don't think that I think he knew that Maul was not going to kill them, that Maul had no reason to just execute the two, because that doesn't get Sidious off his back. It doesn't draw Sidious in. It doesn't deal with any of the problems Maul wants to deal with.
Yeah, all of these people are evil schemers, and everybody is always, every piece on the chessboard is a means to an end. You're not going to go throw away some of your most powerful pieces just for, don't get me wrong, it would make the galaxy a lot better, right, if Dooku got his head lopped off here instead of later.
Right.
Or General Grievous wasn't running around. But, this isn't what it's about. The greater good of the galaxy isn't even a grain of sand in Maul's mind.
No, it's not at all.
Technically it is, because he's going around like, you're all going to die, we need to stop him. He wants the power for himself.
Yeah, he wants to be Sidious, and he knows that the only way to do that is get Sidious out of the way. Yeah. One of the important little lines of dialogue in this book is that Master Tipley is concerned about Obi-Wan's emotions in this, because this is right after Maul killed Satine. This is very, very shortly after that. And so it's very difficult for Obi-Wan to even go into this battle, but he assures her that his emotions are under control as a good Jedi. And we know that to be the case because we see Obi-Wan after that with his emotions still under control. And then the other interesting interaction we have here is Dooku being convinced, or attempting to be convinced, by Maul and Mother Talzin to join them. And Dooku is, again, having none of it. He is expressly saying, there is no way you're going to beat Sidious. Nobody in the galaxy is going to beat Sidious. He says 10,000 Jedi are going to try and fail. Why on earth do you have a chance of beating the guy?
Yeah, and it's all just another ruse.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
It's like an onion. Layers upon layers of ruses and traps and misdeeds.
It's like an ogre.
And so, Grievous escapes. Of course he does.
Because Dooku helps him escape with the Force, which again demonstrates how powerful he is.
Yeah. And so this is probably the stupidest nitpick ever. But if a bunch of droids die, nobody cares. If a bunch of clones die, as long as they don't have a name, nobody cares. Or even if they do have some name here and there, you care a little bit more, but not that much.
When you say nobody, you mean the audience, right?
The audience.
Yes, yeah.
Right. And so Mandalorians, there's not millions of them or billions of them somewhere. They live in one little city on one little planet and a bunch of settlements, little tiny settlements here and there, and they're just getting killed left and right.
Oh, yeah. This book had to have quadrupled the number of Death Watch Mandalorians that exist, because there's a ton of Mandalorian casualties in this.
Well, it's striking to me because they lived under rule of Satine and her corrupt prime minister, Olmec, and they were pacifist, and the Civil War devastated them. And then, boom, flipping a switch. Like, all these people had to have been sitting there like, yeah, that was the pacifism was the dark time. We're going back to our warrior ways, and enough with this stuff. Because they had to have with this.
And they feel like
hundreds of these guys, hundreds of starships.
What even allowed the Mandalorians to entertain their pacifism is that the Republic had maintained galactic peace for 1,000 years. They had gotten comfortable, and then here comes this separatist threat. It's not a threat to Mandalore yet. And then it becomes a massive, quick threat to Mandalore through the Shadow Collective. And they turn on a dime. And you're right that it is interesting that they turn so quickly. It's only been a generation of peace, because Satine is the one who instituted the new Mandalorian movement. But this fact that they're so willing to turn on a dime like that is very, very interesting. And it just shows how much Mandalore was relying on the Republic even before the new Mandalorian movement. Because if they weren't fighting someone else, they were fighting each other.
Yep. And we're going to get into more of that in an upcoming episode, I guess. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, a lot of Mandalorians die. Grievous is still, he's such a powerhouse. Even without his lightsabers, he's able to just wreck face.
It is. I mean,
how many did he kill in this scene? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's obscene.
It's more people than he kills than limbs he has. Well, I guess it's the same number of limbs. But yeah, I mean, we see in Revenge of the Sith, the only movie that he appears in, his just raw strength. He's still a powerhouse without any kind of weapon because he can smash metal and dent the side of a spaceship.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really impressive that, one, Obi-Wan was able to go toe-to-toe with him as many times as he did. And two, it's so interesting about Grievous's character because you think maybe if he wasn't such a coward, he would actually be a powerhouse. Because he is a powerhouse, but against nobody, no face, no name Mandalorians, the second he goes against any named character, he slithers away every time.
Right. That's his MO. So Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, seemingly joins with Maul. What does he say here? We skipped a part. The Jedi have found out where they're at. They're at a meteorite base, a Mandalorian outpost.
Right.
And the Jedi have found them and are boarding Maul's base/vessel.
And it's 4 Jedi. It's Aayla Secura, Mace Windu, Master Tipley, and Obi-Wan. And there's only 3 bad guys. It's Grievous, Dooku, and Maul. And they've all joined Dooku and Maul have joined forces right now just to try and defeat the Jedi. But it's 4 versus 2. You would think that 4 Jedi Masters can make quick work of these Sith, but it's clearly not the case.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. The panels are really cool, seeing these guys square off. Maul is fighting against Aayla Secura and Mace Windu at the same time, and they trade back and forth. It's Obi-Wan and Tipley versus Count Dooku, and guess what happens, Carter? You didn't see this one coming. Master Tipley dies to Count Dooku's hands. And, tell me, I didn't know about Tipley that much. You knew a lot about her, so we don't get too much into this. Tell us about Tipley and her twin sister.
Yeah, well, they're an important aspect of a single episode in the Clone Wars, I wish that I had the frame, the name of the episode in front of me, but it's the season 6 episode where the clone trooper Order 66 triggers in his brain and he kills a Jedi before the order is ever issued. And there's an investigation, and why did these loyal clones shoot this woman in the back? And the woman in question is Tipley's twin sister, Tiplar, and she's a yellow Mickey'an, yellow and green, and she gets just gunned down. And honestly, the reason I know about Tipley and the reason I know about Tiplar is the animation in Season 6. Everybody knows it's great. Well, they are a unique alien that I think was introduced for that scene and for that Clone Wars episode, and they just have a really good look about them. Like, they're a well-designed Star Wars alien. Like, they look unique, but not too unique. Like, they're really well-designed, and so I think that's why it always stuck with me, Tipley and Tiplar, and I knew their names and I knew what they were about.
So, reason I find this so hilarious and the red skin is a factor, it's a very old trope from the 1960s. In Star Trek, the away team would beam down to a planet to accomplish a task, and it would be the main actors, Captain Kirk, McCoy, and Spock, and then some other dude in a red shirt.
Right, security officer.
They'd have their encounter with whatever nefarious forces on that planet, and the guy in the red shirt would die. Well, this is the same thing. Here come the good guys to save the day. Well, guess who dies? The one wearing with the red skin.
Because that's the only Jedi. I mean, she doesn't appear in the movies, so obviously, if someone's picking this up and hadn't seen the Clone Wars, they're gonna be like, "Who is this?" So then we see right after her death, Obi-Wan, tears in his eyes, screaming her name. It's a visceral scene. It would have been more. This is one of the scenes that communicates less over comics. And it's part of the drawing. It's part that it only happens in one panel. But this would have been one of the ones that was really good if they would have put it in the Clone Wars. Like, this battle with the Sith would have been really heated. We would have seen a lot of cool lightsaber, probably a little bit more pithy dialogue, and then we would have had this death.
When we win the lottery, let's produce a scene, and we're going to hire the writers from some shows that we've seen. We're going to hire, what's his name, Tyler Sheridan, to write all the to recombobulate all this dialogue, and we're going to really square off in our costumes, and we're going to have just the coolest scene ever.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to do that. Well, you know Taylor Sheridan, so we'll be able to get that. We'll be able to get that down.
I don't even know his name. Come on.
So, we see afterwards the Jedi come and report to the Chancellor. We let him get away. And this is Sidious. Sidious was trying to use the Jedi again to get his ends done, and that's get rid of some of these guys at least. Definitely kill Maul. The other two can just be collateral for Sidious. And they're clearly not able to get the job done. And that shows, again, how much the Jedi's abilities are diminished right now because of how much the dark side is clouding it. I mean, if you think the dark side is clouding the Jedi throughout the Clone War, just think about how much the dark side is clouding the Jedi when there's Darth Maul, Darth Tyrannus. Darth Maul just communed with Mother Talzin in the same space. There's all of these adherents to the dark side around them, all these followers of Maul.
The cloud of Darth Sidious is on everything.
Exactly. There's just no way the Jedi could have gone into this fight in a clear way. If Sidious can easily handle the 3 Jedi Masters that waltzed into his office and then face off with Mace Windu, then this situation is the same thing. It's way too clouded in the dark side for the Jedi to even have a chance right here.
Yeah. Were there clones fighting in this?
Yeah. Commander Cody, the 212th Battalion.
Yeah. I wish we had seen more of them. We saw a lot of Mandalorian commandos. It would have been nice to have the counterpart there.
Yes, it would have.
More prominent. They were there, but they didn't have any speaking lines. They didn't have all this and that.
Yeah, they were really limited. They were basically not involved. I think Cody says 2 blurbs of dialogue. But that's the other reason. I mean, that in the comic book, it's harder to get that across. I mean, because you can't have chat bubbles all over the place. Yeah. So they have to really. I mean, we know reading this comic book. If this was a TV show episode, it would have maybe had 3 times the amount of dialogue here.
Right.
We probably would have had more exposition about Mandalore. We probably would have had more exposition about the dark side. This is a great production.
The whole Mother Talzin interactions would have been seen in the cartoon.
Yeah, well, with the mist and everything,
Yeah.
I like the medium of comic books a lot. I love it. We're not ragging on comic books. But when you know that this was meant to be made into a television show, that's when you can see the fingerprints on it where, oh yeah, I can see where this was gonna be really good on TV, and it's good in the comic book, but it would be taken up to 11 on a TV screen.
Right.
As I said, it's the same thing as the Dark Disciple novel. You can just, when reading that novel, some things, and it's a novel, so some things are really good exposition and like inside the character's head. Those kind of things you can't get in anything but written. Yeah, in written word. But that's not the case here in the comics, at least. We just have a few narrative blurbs. But the next issue kicks off with Dooku and Maul seemingly on the same side, and the Black Sun and the Pikes saying, we're done here with this relationship. We're not working for you anymore.
All they're doing is getting massacred.
Yeah, exactly. They are just getting killed left and right. They're getting attacked right now by the Separatists. They want profit. They're not getting any money out of this.
This is a quick aside. I just got done watching the Band of Brothers show. That came out in 2000. I was in the Marine Corps, for those who don't know. And as bad as it sounds, war is so bad because you're killing other people that look like you. And when you're fighting droids, it's like, what did you do? You used a whole bunch of effort to sweep trash into the bin.
Right, yeah, you killed a toaster.
And so it's like, it has to be the most shallow, emptiest victories or the worst losses because you got your ass kicked by a toaster.
Right, exactly.
So think how these guys who have, they don't give a crap about the Galactic Civil War outside of profiting from it somehow. And they're being asked to put their butts on the line. Yeah, the Clone War. I'm sorry. Well, the Clone War, yeah. These gangsters are being asked to put their butts on the line for some goofy, tatted up weirdo.
Right, that's on clearly some personal vendetta.
Yeah.
There's no money to be made in killing Sith Lords. Like, that's not, you're not going to get any cash.
Shallow victory on shallow victory on shallow victory. It's like, I would be done with this. You'd be quick.
Right.
I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. And so we see in the beginning that Dooku is behind Maul. They seem to be that they're, in cahoots. And then Dooku is completely betrayed immediately. Maul's like, we never trusted you for a second, and that's obvious. Why would you ever trust another Sith Lord? Especially with Dooku's entire monologue a few issues ago, just defending Sidious. I mean, he sits there the whole time and says, you will not overcome him. No one will overcome him. This guy is going to win. Nothing's going to stop him. He's going to rule the galaxy forever.
Here's another quick aside. How long has Dooku been at Sidious's side?
Right here, it's been, how many years? 12, 13 years. It's been 13 years.
So think of watching all the dominoes fall that he's seen. Could you, if you were, especially what we know as an observer, outside observer of what Darth Sidious is capable of, it would be really hard to not want to follow what he says, especially in Dooku's case, because he said this was going to happen, and it happened. He's been doing this for 13 years, bro. I think you need to get the message here.
Right.
You can resist him all you want. You're not going to have a good time. Well, yeah, we said that a few times now. So what's next?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But so Dooku gets captured, and he's hauled off to Dathomir, and Maul says, you're going to pay for the crimes of your master. And this is a twofold plan. They want to revive Mother Talzin using Dooku's life force, and they also want to draw Sidious in. And so they begin the process of Mother Talzin being revived by sapping Dooku's life force, and then we see in the next page, I think the only Grievous Sidious in-person interaction we've ever seen.
And so here, I'm a doofus.
I guess that's totally not true, because the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, but this is the only Grievous Sidious interaction where Sidious is a Sith Lord.
And this was double surprising for me, because I'm a doofus sometimes and I read too fast, and I didn't realize that Darth Sidious was on the same ship as Grievous. So it caught me by surprise a few pages later. Like we said, this process is taking place, continues to take place, where Dooku's getting his life force sucked out. It's a really cool panel. Go ahead. And
in this process, we have the revelation that Darth Maul is Mother Talzin's literal son. Yeah. When he says mother, does not mean the mother title that they all call her. He means his literal mom.
Yeah. But in a couple of panels later, Grievous walks in walks behind him Darth Sidious. And man, I love these scenes.
Yeah, they're really, really good. They're well put together. And so we have Darth Sidious and General Grievous land on the planet. They encounter Maul and Mother Talzin sapping the life force from Dooku so that she can be revived. And then Darth Sidious, he's got the glowing red eyes. He's ready to go. He says in his argument with Maul is talking about how his plans can't be stopped, and Sidious says there's only one plan, and it's mine. And that's pretty much what everybody knows and everybody sees right here. We also, just as an interesting, I think they threw in this one little scene. We have Cast talking with the Black Sun leader and the Pikes in the middle of this, right before the dark side fight begins. And they're saying that they're just done. They're ditching Maul. They're through with this. They're over. And so I think they just threw that in there just to make sure to explain why the syndicates weren't in the Siege of Mandalore.
Yeah, sounds good to me. But yeah, then this is one of the most epic fight scenes I think I've ever seen. Right here, wouldn't you say? That's coming up next these pages, because it's Mother Talzin is possessed the body of Count Dooku, and they immediately however you want to put it, immediately starts fighting with Sidious. And Sidious has this line: "You control Dooku's body, but you possess none of his skill." So you mentioned Dragon Ball Z earlier. This is a classic thing. Captain Ginyu takes over Goku's body and you possess his body, but none of his skill or power and all this stuff. It's the same thing. It's so funny.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And release my apprentice, haggard witch. So it's like, he was ready to throw this guy in the trash earlier, but now he's released my apprentice. Yeah.
It's really good. It's great dialogue the whole time. You know, Sidious and Maul, or Grievous and Maul even pause their fight to see Mother Talzin resurrected. And so now we've got 5 dark side Force users all together in this giant battle. We've got Talzin, Grievous, Dooku, Sidious, and Maul all together. And we have this, maybe the second best panel printed for this is Sidious with his Force Lightning and Mother Talzin with a green Dathomir Witch Force Lightning battling it out. They're not bothering with lightsabers. They're not bothering with anything like that. It's straight to Force on Force.
And this is the finality right here. This is all the cards are on the table. And how long has Mother Talzin and Darth Maul worked for this revenge plot? It's all come together, and unfortunately it fails.
Yes. Well, I mean, if they had succeeded, Mother Talzin didn't have machinations to take over the galaxy. Maul might have, but he's nowhere near as capable as Sidious. I mean, this would have saved the galaxy had the other dark side won here.
Right. Yeah, and we'd have a whole different thing, but yeah, you're right. Nobody is as evil or as cunning as Darth Sidious for sure. But man, these panels are so amazing.
I mean, the art is far and away at the end of this very good because the fight looks great. There's good exposition dialogue. The 4th issue is the premier issue of the book. But we see Dooku and Sidious joined together with their Force Lightning. They're battling Mother Talzin. She's got a shield up. And really the interesting thing, one of the funnier things about it is you've just got Grievous hanging out by himself, 4 arms out, no lightsabers ignited, watching these people with Force powers fight because he's just regular guy. I mean, he's got a midichlorian count of -20. He doesn't have he has no place in this fight. But that's also the beauty of Grievous is that he can hold his own with any one of these individuals. Like, you know, if they were teamed up against him, he'd be chopped up real quick. But in these scenes, we know that Grievous can stand up, and Grievous is the one they give the last laugh to. After Mother Talzin forces Maul to leave, and for her to protect Maul, we see Grievous waltz right through the Force shield and stab Mother Talzin right in the chest, and I think that is the best panel of the book.
It is, yeah, you're right.
I think the combined Maul's shocked face right above Grievous's 2 lightsabers impaling Mother Talzin is the best art in the whole issue.
So, minor rollback here. The walking in scenes of Sidious, you know, we didn't really see was Sidious outside of a hologram. Sidious wasn't in the Clone Wars until we saw him in that arc, Maul's arc at the end, where he comes in and kills Savage Opress.
We see Sidious in the plot line where Cad Bane is meant to steal Force-sensitive children.
Well, but he didn't go on a lightsaber fight, did he?
No, but he's robed up and he's on Mustafar and he's clearly being evil.
So that's my point is, a small battle, a lightsaber fight between Darth Maul, and think of what we were robbed of, not seeing this in the cartoon version. This epic battle that we just witnessed here.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
When Darth Sidious walked in, how cool was it seeing him on those screens? And now we get to see in the comic book, but man, I wish we could see this on the screen.
No, you're absolutely right. We also see the big bad Separatist 3 in the last page, the top panel, standing together in what I think is the only time they're ever together, ever. I'm talking in the Clone Wars. I'm talking in any point. This right here, this fight might be the only time those 3 are ever completely around each other. I mean, it's like a State of the Union thing. It's designated survivor. You don't want your 3 guys in the same spot.
Yeah, yeah. The rest is all holographic phone calls and doing this and that.
Yeah. And then the last 3 panels, the Sidious monologue at the very end, is really important. And I think this has large implications for the universe because Sidious says, "This was a difficult piece to maneuver, but now it is in place. Maul's future has been erased, while ours is more certain than it has ever been." Because we know that Sidious, he communes with the Force. He uses his little witch cauldron thing to look at the future and see many possibilities the same way that Yoda can, but Yoda was clouded at this time. But this dialogue right here proves that there is a timeline and a possibility for Maul to have actually overthrown Sidious. That this was not a guarantee, and that Sidious had to go out of his way to get Mother Talzin eliminated just so he knew now without Mother Talzin, Maul is not a literal threat. The Siege of Mandalore, everything that happened there, Sidious already knew he had won by the time the Siege of Mandalore happens. He knew Maul wasn't going to convince Ahsoka. He knew there was no stopping him. I mean, Ahsoka and Maul probably couldn't have stopped Sidious anyway, even combined. But we see right there that all of this was Sidious, and I think this right here, this dialogue, lends something to the argument we had, or the discussion we had a few podcasts ago. I really wish I remember the episode we were talking about it in. Oh, the end of our Bad Batch episode. So go check out Bad Batch 5 through 9 as we talk about if Sidious is a mastermind and knows every outcome and has a firm plan, or if he is planning for contingencies. I think that single line of dialogue bolsters the contingency argument a ton.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know Maul was going to come back. He had to sense Maul. Maul had to build himself up enough to be a threat on Mandalore. And then Sidious had to go out of his way to fight Mother Talzin, didn't know that she was back. I think this proves that Sidious is just a master at moving pieces in the right direction, but that contingencies still come up he's got a plan for.
Yep, that sounds good to me. I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't have a response for that. But seeing the pieces moved, this is why we love Star Wars. This is why we're here talking about this. And the type of pieces get to see this issue of seeing all these characters come. So I'm a broken record how cool this was. What we're robbed of on this, not being able to see this in the TV show. You know, they need to go back and do this in not the Visions. What are we doing? What are they doing with the Ahsoka stuff and the Count Dooku?
Oh, Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi. This needs to be a Tales of the Jedi.
Yep, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think it's a standout comic, folks. I really think you should check it out. I mean, if you're a Clone Wars guy or a Clone Wars gal, then you have got to check this out because it is totally worth your time. It's just an unproduced episode. It fits in perfect. I mean, it got Dave Filoni's stamp of approval. The same way that Dark Disciple did. Dave Filoni did some editing on this. He made sure the dialogue was right. Like, his hands are on this on purpose. And so you should really, as a Clone Wars fan, check this out if you want to be a completionist. It is happily going to have a shelf on my bookcase, and I should have read it way sooner. I mean, I can't believe that I'd read it for the first time yesterday because it really is one of the better Star Wars comic books.
It really is.
And it was the first Star Wars comic book, I believe, that was published that was canon because it was the only thing. The things that Disney did in 2014 when they wiped the slate clean is they said the movies are all canon, the Clone Wars is canon, and this single comic book is canon. And so this is the only written word that Disney kept after the wipe clean.
That's amazing. I really wish I could get inside the machinations of Disney and understanding, you know, what got this to be a comic book, you know, because why did they not throw this away? I mean, obviously we know why, but I want to be a fly on the wall of those discussions of somebody making the case for this story right here, and like, because we did have the season 7 of Clone Wars, right? And so,
well, this, you know, I think this totally would have been in season 7 if they hadn't already published the comic. But you're right. I mean, they have those others that are just animatronics. They have those others that are just stills, and you know, this got made into something. This was something that Disney wanted to develop, and it's an important story. And I'm sure Dave Filoni pushed for it to be. And it's the same with the Dark Disciple book. That book was an important enough story that they wanted to tell it, because that book wraps up Asajj Ventress. I mean, it answers the question of, where is Asajj Ventress during Revenge of the Sith or during anything else? And so I think it answers some questions. This one, it didn't answer questions that I didn't know I had. And so it is interesting that they chose to make it into a comic book, but I'm glad they did because it's very good.
Yeah, and I guess at this point the Shadow Collective is really no more. You know. So,
well, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just the Mandalorian aspect. It still exists.
Yeah.
But it's still Maul still has his hold on the underworld in different ways because we know that he becomes Crimson Dawn, and we know that he leads Crimson Dawn. So Maul's fingerprints on the underworld are not gone. He's not completely been abandoned because he was able to make Crimson Dawn in the first place, and he still has the loyalty of the Mandalorians.
Yeah, and it gave Palpatine enough confidence to know that he wasn't a threat anymore.
Yes, absolutely. So with that great book, go check it out at your local comic book store, buy it on Amazon. We really, really encourage you to do that. But we're going to take a look at the future of Star Wars right now. I mentioned them a little bit in the intro today. We're going to hop right into the HoloNet news segment.
You made the HoloNet.
Our very first story for the HoloNet news segment today is a sad one. We're going to start on a pretty sad note. And I don't think that Colin has seen this little piece of news. He might have. I might have sent it to him on Instagram. But, Colin, Star Wars Celebration, which is coming at the beginning of April, that's going to be the last Star Wars Celebration until 2025. They're skipping a year in 2024. They're not doing it until 2025.
Yeah, I did read this news. Did they say if it was in America? I hope so.
They haven't announced. I really hope it's in America.
Is it going to be in Australia?
Yeah, I hope it's here.
China, I wouldn't mind going to either one of those places, I guess, depending. But, yeah, that's a bummer because it's a little – our lives are extremely busy right now, and we don't really have the means or wherewithal to go to London this year. And so, I have a savings fund for this, for the 2024 show.
Right.
Well, what was?
Now it'll roll into the 2025
I
savings
guess we can
fund.
have double the amount of fun. We can get a upgrade to a suite and drive around in limos and drink champagne the whole time. But yeah, that's disappointing. Maybe it'll be in Texas.
Yeah, maybe. I heard rumors Celebration will be in Austin.
That'd be nice.
I think what they're doing with that rollback and with not doing Celebration until 2025 is because we know we're getting movie news at this Celebration, and we know the next film is going to release in 2025. So I think there's a few things that are happening for there probably not to be a 24. In 24, they're just going to be trying to build hype for the movie, and that's not enough content to release more than a year out before the movie. But people are going to be begging for it, so I think that's part of the reason. The other reason is that the Screenwriters Guild is, by all accounts, about to go on strike again. The last strike was in 2007, and now people think they're about to go on strike again because the contract's about to be out. And so, if you remember 2007... Transformers, Dark of the Moon, or maybe Transformers 2, one of the Transformers sequels went into production without a script because the Writers Guild strike. The Office had a shorter season because of the Writers Guild strike that year, and there was a few other things that happened that were a result of the Writers Guild strike.
There was a TV show called Heroes that was real popular in its first season, and that writers' strike happened. And it devastated the show. It never recovered. It was never good enough.
And it's worrisome that something like that could happen to Star Wars. So I'm happy that they're pumping the brakes. And I think that's just an impact for 25 as Disney is expecting this strike. They're worried they're not going to have enough content to talk about in 24. And that leads us into our next story in that Mandalorian Season 4 script is done.
Oh, it is?
Jon Favreau said it is finished. He and Filoni got together. And Favreau said, how are we going to tie it into Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew and everything else? He said he wrote it during Mando Season 3 post-production. And that is a so secure feeling, sigh of relief that this won't be affected by the writer's strike. And also, we have a plan. There is a roadmap for The Mandalorian. They know where they're headed. They know what they're doing. They're not firing from the hip. They're not, flying by the seat of their pants. Favreau has a plan.
That gives me a huge warm and fuzzy feeling of, one of the ways me and my son connect with Star Wars is over Grogu. And this is one of the stories I'm most invested in. I'm so excited to see how this is going to go.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's such an exciting story. We are mere days away. We're 5 days away.
5 days.
From the Mandalorian Season 3 premiere. And so to hear that Season 4 is already completed on the script means there's going to be no issues headed into production no matter what happens, and that is a really reassuring feeling.
One day Pedro Pascal is going to want too much money. We're going to have to see how that goes.
Yeah, that's true. Well, other reports from this month is he's never on set. I mean, he's never on set because it's not him in the suit. Unless he's taken the helmet off, which happens twice a season. And so he's never there. They said he just goes in, voice records. And, this is just for a side discussion, not even news. This was around Star Wars Twitter. This was around Star Wars Instagram. And some people were really upset about the fact that Pedro Pascal's not really there. Oh, he's not getting to know Grogu very well. People were kind of upset that Pedro Pascal seems to have a lighter hand on the production. But let me ask you this, Colin. Is James Earl Jones important to Star Wars? James Earl Jones never spent a day of his life on a Star Wars set.
I was scrolling through Instagram on the Reels. I don't do TikTok, so I saw one of those. And he talked about being paid some paltry amount of money for the first Star Wars. But by the third one, he was rolling up in his limo and doing this and that. Right. So, obviously, that's not the case with Pedro Pascal. But, yeah, I'm glad we live in today's day and age where it shouldn't be for everybody, but they're doing the AI voice thing. So we're going to live with James Earl Jones's voice forever. And that's so valuable. I hope they paid $100 million for that.
Yeah,
because that's a bargain.
Yeah, James Earl Jones's family should be set for life if they're taking his voice and putting it through AI. But we're really grateful as fans that that's going to happen. And so to complain about Pedro Pascal not being on set is just odd to me. He doesn't need to be. Sure, it'd be cool, I guess, but why do you care? The guy in the suit is not Pedro. The only time it's Pedro is when he has the helmet off, and he's there for those scenes, obviously. And then he's voice recording the rest, and it works fine. You didn't even know before this report. Nobody knew that before this report.
And rest assured, I bet the guy in the suit's getting paid. We should know his name. It's a crime we don't.
I know, yeah, we absolutely should. Credit to him. And I think it's multiple people, actually. I think it's 3 guys.
So one thing I've always heard is acting behind a mask is an extremely hard thing to do. And like David Prowse, a lot of people don't know his name.
Right, that's true. And you hear him, and David Prowse still filled the dialogue. I imagine the guys who play Mando still fill the dialogue for the other actors. And you hear their voices behind it, and it just isn't fitting, obviously. I mean, David Prowse does not have a wimpy voice by any means, but he doesn't have James Earl Jones's Darth Vader
commanding
voice.
Presence. Yeah, and a voice.
And so if you were demanding that people are in the costume, then you either get David Prowse's voice or you get a James Earl Jones-sized Darth Vader. And no offense to James Earl Jones, but we got the best of both worlds out of it. Yeah. And so that's what we needed.
And it made such interesting talking about, too. And the history is so rich. Yeah. Okay, right. What's next on our list here?
The next thing is just a small thing. Rosario Dawson, I think, might have mistakenly let this slip, that we now know Ahsoka is coming out in the fall. Because there's a movie coming out that Rosario Dawson is a part of, and I apologize for not remembering the name of this movie, but it comes out in the middle of August, and she told people in the interview for this movie, Ahsoka comes out after this movie premieres.
Okay.
And so knowing that release date, we now know that Ahsoka will be coming out in the fall sometime. We also have a little bit of news that it seems Disney has accidentally, there's been a lot of accidents around Ahsoka, in that they have accidentally confirmed Ahsoka Season 2.
Yeah, I saw this piece of news, and what that says to me is that they did a really good job making this show, that the audiences who've gotten to see it already have really liked it, and that they want more. And in our previous news, didn't we say that Thrawn might not be in this? Right? Or I guess he is.
I think he's totally in it. I'm on the Thrawn train. Is going to be in it.
It could be a very ending blurb, right?
No, I think we're going to get Thrawn mid-season finale, and he's going to ride out the rest of the season as the villain.
Well, whatever the case is, we, as Star Wars fans of our caliber, know we're going to see more.
Right.
It's just a few episodes of what Thrawn is capable of is not good enough.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Especially in this setting.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so it's exciting to see that's basically been confirmed that Ahsoka is going to have a Season 2. A lot of people, I loved Andor. I mean, it is my favorite Star Wars show. We'll see after The Mandalorian Season 3 if I'm still saying that, but I loved Andor. But a lot of people, when Andor is coming out, took the opportunity to take shots at The Mandalorian and take shots at Ahsoka, of which they haven't seen yet, which means they were just taking shots at Dave Filoni and his writing. They're like, oh, Ahsoka's going to be I can't believe I'm going to have to watch Ahsoka after I watch Andor. And those exact same people, 3 minutes into the show, are going to eat their words. There's no way you're not going to be excited for Ahsoka as a Star Wars fan. I liked the high drama and political thrillership of Andor. If every Star Wars was like that, I wouldn't be a Star Wars fan. And so Disney knows that. Disney knows that Ahsoka is marketable. They know the name alone is worth millions, and she was an animated character created for the Clone Wars, that they are already confident enough to give it a season 2.
Yeah. So few characters start in animation and end up where we're at today. Harley Quinn is the most prominent one that starts out in an animation TV show, straddles comic books, ends up into live action. And it's such, and then combine that with Star Wars, obviously, but also, I think we've discussed it before, maybe outside of Anakin, she's one of the most depicted characters of the timeline across her life, right?
Yeah, we see
From
every
birth,
moment.
And we know that she dies, and chances are we're going to get to see it at some point in some season of this TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. So that wraps up our HoloNet news segment today. We're gonna coast right in to our Star Wars moment of the week. We haven't described the Star Wars moment of the week in a few episodes, so for anybody, this is your first episode tuning in. Star Wars moment of the week is Colin and I just share with you a little blurb that we had in our daily lives that had to do with Star Wars. Small, big, whatever it is, we are going to let you know what we did this week in Star Wars. Colin, we'll start off with you. What did you do this week in Star Wars?
Yeah, to build on what you just said, this is one of my most favorite moments of doing this podcast. I really love coming to you, Carter, and to our audience talking about this stuff. Okay, so I like to browse Reddit a lot. It's a pastime for me, in between tasks at work or when I get home scrolling through stuff. The Star Wars subreddit is one of my favorites. But Star Wars, the first word in that is stars, right? And so I like Star Trek. I like science fiction books, Isaac Asimov, all these other things, but also literal stuff. I live where I don't live in a city, so I can look out at the best views of the sky, and the launching of that telescope and all the discoveries that thing's making. I am just so thankful that I'm alive in this time. We're going to discover all these things. So, speaking of discoveries, there's a gentleman by the name of Bray Falls. He has I looked it up. I don't know the name of it exactly, but he's an amateur astronomer, and he has a very fancy telescope that he was using to look at a specific wavelength of light and found a nebula that no one has ever found before. And, we take it for granted. There's very famous nebulas. The Pillars of Creation, right, is one that, if you say nebula, that first comes to mind. For me, it's the nebula from Wrath of Khan, but whatever. But this guy's from Phoenix, Arizona, and I guess somewhere around he lives, pointed his telescope at the sky, found a nebula, and because he's a Star Wars fan, decided to call it the Kyber Crystal Nebula.
Oh, wow. That's a great name. I hadn't heard this at
I'm so sorry
all.
I took so long to build it up, but we're going to probably post this on our Instagram and share it.
Yeah, it's a great picture.
Take a look at that, Carter. This guy in his backyard, proverbially, with a $7,000, and I understand that stands a lot, but if you care about a hobby, that's a paltry sum for a hobby. I spent that much on two of my hobbies, right?
Right.
I drive a $70,000 hobby car, right? So $7,000, a tenth of that is nothing. And so this guy in his backyard found one of the coolest looking astrological phenomenons that anyone has ever seen, and he named it the Kyber Crystal. And it looks like it's a blue crystal looking thing.
Yeah, it looks like a Kyber crystal.
Cool.
Yeah, that is cool, and we will be posting that for sure.
What we are capable of on this earth, especially like from me and Carter's context of how we can affect the world we live in, is looking at this stuff. We fantasize about Star Wars. I fantasize about what this guy's capable of doing, and he does it.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's my Star Wars moment of the week.
Now that's a great one. That's a unique Star Wars moment of the week so far. Mine's a little more down to earth, but mine is costuming. I am going to be wearing, and we've already let you guys know, we're going to be at Lubbock Con this weekend. The time is finally upon us. We're going to be at Lubbock Con on the 26th. I'm going to be wearing a Rebel pilot slash intelligence officer costume, and I'm really excited about that. I've been building the costume. I've been putting it together. I'm really close to getting it done. The last thing I got to do is build out that rebel rank patch, the insignia, and after that, I'll be good to go, and I'll unveil that costume at LubbockCon when we are there live on Sunday the 26th at 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you are not around here, you're not around Lubbock, you're not near the area, don't worry, because we are going to be live streaming the whole event. You can tune in both on our YouTube and our Twitch to find us there. We're super excited about doing it. We want you guys to watch it, and you'll get to see my brand new costume.
Yeah, I am pumped about that. Your costume is really unique. Can I explain my costume, or am I going to step on your toes a little bit? Yeah. So mine, I'm just going as a Mandalorian. I own a Darksaber. I got the helmet from Disney World. I don't have time or effort or desire totally enough to put together a bona fide Mandalorian armor, so I just bought a hoodie that looks like it. Since I'm going to be working this thing, I'm wearing pants and shoes that are comfortable. Sure got to deal with that. But I want to have a pouch with a toy Grogu in it. I saw some other people doing that. It's one of the coolest looking things. It really catches your eye. And it's not life size, because the actual life size dolls are quite expensive. And to get a decent looking one anyway, that's not a stuffed toy. But I'm so looking forward to going down to this. I love convention culture. I love everything that has to do with making costumes. I wish I had more time to make them. I can't wait to see your manifestation of what you're doing. Because it doesn't have, like, mine's generic, right? I bet I run into another person who's dressed just like me. Probably literally with a hoodie and everything, right? But seeing what people come up with is the absolute best, outside of watching a movie or reading a comic book or something like that.
No, it absolutely is. It's super cool. We can't wait to be at LubbockCon. We're super excited. It's going to be a good time. So thank you guys for listening to this episode. The next episode you'll hear will likely be our LubbockCon Live special, coming out live this Sunday, 4 o'clock Central Time, and then after that, we'll get it right up onto the podcast server, anywhere you get your podcasts, you're going to be able to find it soon. Only the audio, though, so if you want to see the video, you'll have to run over to our YouTube and our Twitch.com. Colin, what's that Twitch.com link?
Twitch.tv/Station Media. I bet .com works too.
Yeah, probably. So you can check us out there. You can also check us out on YouTube at Star Wars Station. You can find us on Instagram at StarWars.Station. You can find us on Twitter at SW_Station. And you can find us on Patreon. Our Patreon, aside from your love and your great fan, just the amount of fans that we have and how much we love engaging with the community, you help us keep going by donating to us on Patreon. We love our patrons. We have so many exclusive things on there. You can have Colin and I play specific lists on Star Wars Legion. You can listen to exclusives on there. You can listen to our live commentary early. You can listen to our reactions early. You can get stickers. You can get merchandise. You can get all kinds of stuff for our Patreon. And it's all starting at $1. You can get the first tier at $1, goes up from there. That is patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Please check it out. If you can't check out the Patreon, we know that you can give us a 5-star review on Spotify, on Apple. Every review helps. Spreading the word helps. Tell your friends. Send a link to your grandma. Send a link to your dog. Let them know that there's a Star Wars podcast out there for them, no matter the level of Star Wars fanness, whether they are mega fans, whether they've only seen The Mandalorian. Send it around. You're going to be standing around the water cooler soon talking about The Mandalorian. Oh, did you see this? Oh, did you see this? Say, my friends Carter and Colin, they know everything there is to know about this. If you want to know more about The Mandalorian, you should check out this podcast and give it a 5-star review. So, if you enjoy our podcast, the best thing you can do for us is tell a friend. Thank you so much for listening. We want to game the algorithm. We want to grow. We can only do that with your help. And we're going to continue to grow. We're going to grow along with our community. So, next time you'll hear us, it's going to be live. Please tune in to the live stream. And thank you very much for listening. And may the Force be with you.
Hey, right fast, if you tune in a live stream and you have your local Comic-Con, we'd like to go to that one too. have the organizers reach out and invite us to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're open to doing panels at any con in the United States of America.
We want to grow our brand and be out there. I'm looking forward to it. Yes. Thank you, Carter, for this insightful day and comic book. Loved it. Hey, y'all have a great day. May the force be with you.